All right. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome back to Freight Perspectives, our podcast where we focus on the European freight market. I'm Lena von Fritschen. I'm joined once again by Christian, our expert on European road freight. Today, we're diving into a challenge that's been giving everyone in industry some sort of headache. So, we're talking about the reintroduction of border controls and the associated waiting times trucks are facing. So the free movement of goods is supposed to be a fundamental pillar of the EU, but for around 18 months now, the so-called temporary border controls have been causing some disruptions across Europe. We're here to unpack the why behind these controls, where the worst bottlenecks are happening, and most importantly, what this means for the future of European road transportation, and in the grand scheme of things, how this, in particular with other issues, European road transportation is facing. So, Christian, I know you've been tracking this closely. I'm curious what prompted you to relaunch the service specifically focused on border waiting times, and how exactly does it work to provide that needed transparency for carriers and shippers alike?
Yes, so we were monitoring the situation all the time, but in the past months or weeks, we also received lots of requests from customers, carriers, the media, as well as think tanks asking about the situation at the borders. So they remembered at the end our former six-fold service that was active during COVID times, and yes. So how it works is that we measure the time trucks need to pass the border geofence and to compare it then at the end with the usual time it takes. And if it takes longer, we display the median waiting time of the trucks, so to say the premium to the normal situation.
So I have to ask, are these border delays just a, let's say, minor annoyance that carriers need to deal with, or are they truly causing significant disruptions across the European network?
Well, I think if we are honest, then in isolation, they are rather a minor issue. But at the end, they
Mm.
compound with the waiting times at loading, unloading docks, the increased traffic jams due to the infrastructure works, etc. And thereby, they are reducing the operational efficiency. If we make an example, so if a truck loses just 30 additional minutes weekly at the border controls, this equals at the end annually 3 days without revenue. So it is, although a minor issue and not disrupting, it is an issue regarding efficiency and the operations, especially on the carrier side.
Yeah. So I know you've been analyzing this closely, and based on the data you've been collecting, where are you seeing the worst bottlenecks right now? So which border crossings across Europe are experiencing the longest waiting times currently?
Yeah, I think for sure that they are outer borders to the Schengen area. They show the highest waiting times, but also within the
Mhm.
Schengen areas now. With the reintroduction and intensification of border checks in at German eastbound borders, for instance, this causes delays up to 60 minutes, particularly on Mondays and Tuesdays when a lot of trucks from the Eastern Europe head into Western Europe to perform services. And they are the biggest disturbances currently.
Yeah. So how are these border controls affecting available capacity then in the freight market? Because I would think that overall this could be another addition to the already constrained capacity in the market. So with the early signs also of economic recovery in Europe, should our listeners be particularly worried about these disruptions?
Yes, as you mentioned, so the additional time spent at the border crossing reduces the available transport capacity. I wouldn't say we should be worried about the current impact. However, as just recently Belgium announced also plans to implement border controls, not I don't know yet to which extent, etc. But if they do so and joining Germany and the Netherlands, then depending on how many countries at the end introduce checks and the intensity of those checks, this could become a more significant capacity issue, and especially if transportation demand increases.
Yeah. So are these, let's say, temporary controls, which have been called for a while now, since 18 months, at what point do you think companies should stop then treating this as a short-term issue and start fundamentally rethinking their transportation networks then? Is that
Yeah.
something they should be considering already?
Well, it's a brilliant question, and it's not that easy to answer, I must admit, because I don't think that the current disruptions monitor justify any strategic re-engineering of networks purely based on the border controls. However, I would consider them in all future network planning events, for instance. And if these disruptions persist, some truck owners might also consider leaving or reducing their services for Western European countries. So this could be a real issue, and especially since those disruptions typically occur when traveling from east to west. Knowing that almost 10% is cabotage within Germany, this is an impact of the available capacity. So, but having then strategic changes, that's a rather tough one.
So that means essentially, yes, to closely monitor that, and we're helping our listeners to do that and the ones who read Freight Perspectives. But on the other side, keep closely monitoring that, but no strategic, let's say, implications yet needed. I think there are other pressing issues carriers and shippers are facing. So looking beyond individual company adaptations or proposed potential adaptations, what solutions do you see on the horizon? So what role could technology play? What policy changes should we be advocating for the European level to address these challenges, you think?
Well, I think technology can help to mitigate waiting time peaks through real-time route adjustments and maybe also rest time optimization, just to avoid those peak times at the borders. Um, and from a policy side, well, there are ongoing discussions on EU level about economic stimulation, reducing bureaucracy and boosting efficiency. And on the other side, we have measures like the border controls, which contradict to these goals and simply add another negative factor for business operating in Europe. So, yeah, there is not so much possible to influence from us, the industry players. It's more about an effect hitting the market, but not disrupting, but which is a negative point in business at the end.
Good. Well, thank you, Christian, for sharing all of that with us today. And for any listeners wanting to stay on top of the situation, I'd highly recommend checking out our blog, Freight Perspectives. We've got the real-time data on those border waiting times and tons of other insights that help you navigate some of these challenges. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone. Join us next time for another deep dive into logistics and freight. Until then, see you next time.